traffic congestion isn't just a massive headache for commuters. It also comes with a hefty price tag. Research suggests it could be costing the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area $44.7 billion a year in economic and social value. I talked to Giles Gherson, President and CEO of the Toronto Region Board of Trade, about the financial stakes and what route he thinks we should take to get out of this mess. Let's talk about that price tag. Pretty hefty when we talk about $40 billion. But help us understand, what does that actually mean for cities when we talk about economic and social value?
A whole bunch of things. So it's kind of as you described it, but you've really got two factors here. You've got the economy and you've got quality of life, and the two kind of come together. For a city to be prosperous and grow and be vibrant, mobility is at the heart of that, or connectivity, if you want to use that word. And when you've got the congestion crisis that we have, it really impedes that connectivity. So it means that if I'm delivering a product or service around the city or across the city or out of the city or into the city, that's taking me a lot longer. That's cost, right? If I'm a plumber or an electrician, I'm doing service calls, I'm going to do far fewer calls. That's going to, right? I'm going to reduce my income, or I'm going to charge more. So this becomes a cost of living problem, right? You're seeing costs rise because of the difficulty of getting around the city. At another level, it's companies coming to expand here, to grow here, to invest here, or not, or leave the city because they find it too hard to get employees here because they can't get around, or it's just, again, back to the delivery of goods and services is too difficult, move to another place. So we know as a Board of Trade that there are a number of large international companies that, they put Toronto on their short list for an expansion and they didn't come.
Because of congestion.
Because of congestion. And it's kind of well known around the world that Toronto has an acute congestion problem. And it's one of, we're in the top 10 globally of a congestion problem. And it shouldn't be.
Not something we should be proud of course. All right, I want to talk, we are at the corner of Yonge and Eglinton. Lots of attention on the Eglinton Crosstown. Right. Still don't have an exact date. We don't need to get into that. But do you see the Crosstown helping alleviate some of these costs that you just talked about?
Absolutely. I think the Crosstown will be, I'm not going to say a game changer. I think the Arterial line plus Eglinton, but also when you look at commuter rail, the massive expansion that's coming to GO and electrification of GO, which will speed up service, all-day two-way GO, to regional rail. These projects coming together over the next 8 or 9 years, that's a bit of a wait, but those will be a game changer altogether. But even the Crosstown itself will, in the northern part of the core, that will be a significant improvement. But I will say this: if it is going to make the kind of difference that it needs to make, it can't have the same problems that Finch West has, which has just opened. I was in Paris before Christmas at a conference, and I had to take a kind of almost like Eglinton or St. Clair, there's an LRT running down the center of a street called Boulevard Berthier. Looks very similar. We stopped to let people on and off, and then we whizzed through traffic lights. And we got to speeds of about seemed like faster than it probably was, but it was maybe 40 to 50 kilometers an hour.
Oh, wow.
So we actually got from A to B very quickly. I took that, I had a cousin living there, but I went back and forth quite a lot, and it was amazing. And I kind of thought back to St. Clair, and I wondered about I thought about Finch and of course Eglinton. And are we going to have signaling priority, for example, that will take you through traffic lights and get you A to B much more quickly? Then people will take it.
Right.
Reliability and speed are core to transit.
Speaking of speed, you had talked about it's kind of like commuters and transit riders just know that they're going to have to wait. When we talk about the Eglinton Crosstown, 15 years to construct, 6 years later than when it was originally supposed to open. Finch West, approximately 4 years. Are construction delays in these types of projects just par for the course? Are we supposed, when we talk about, transit or kind of, you lay out the GO and you lay out Ontario line, there's a lot of promise there. There's a lot of excitement there, but it comes with this long wait.
I think par for the course here, or has been par for the course here. I don't think past its prologue. when you talk to the folks who are on the working on the Ontario line or on the GO electrification expansion, they're using very different techniques. We did a report out of the Board of Trade about a year and a bit ago called The Price of Progress. And what we found was this massive, massive gap in the cost of building transit in Toronto per kilometer, like nearly $800 million, versus European cities, Milan, Paris, London, Barcelona, Istanbul, where it's between $100 and $300 million.
Why?
The way they plan their project. It's all about planning. You got to plan very carefully. And so everything kind of emanates from planning. Our new projects are being much better planned than I think the current ones that we're kind of still addressing. The governance of the project. Look at Eglinton, the disputes, right? They're legion between the various parties. Other countries, and now we are moving to an alliance model where you pull all the parties together and invent who does what exactly, who's responsible for what exactly, how are we going to collaborate exactly so you don't end up with these disputes. That's a huge factor in the delays. And then it's the use of technology. We haven't been using technology nearly as well as the Europeans. Digital twin technology, for example, in the planning process. We're using it now. The Europeans have been using it for a while. We haven't used it in the past. Standardization of tunnels and stations, new to us, but they've been doing that in Europe. And then probably another key factor is in Toronto and in Ontario, we've typically done episodic projects. You start a project, you finish it with that team, you collapse it, start another one some other time. Whole new team, whole new way of working. That takes a lot of time. In Europe, it's a flow of projects, a continuous flow. You learn from the past projects, you apply those learnings to the next project, on you go. And that has a big difference. We're doing that in nuclear in Ontario.
Right.
Huge results, right? And so those are some of the things that we are now doing that we didn't do before that should make a big difference in speeding up the projects.
On top of that, is there a role for business when we talk about funding transit?
Well, I mean, business obviously, business has employees.
Right, yeah.
Employees use transit. They pay for transit. I don't think there should be any special levy if that's what you're saying. I think transit is something that, property taxes pay for, in Toronto, 60% of property taxes go to transit. And who pays the commercial property tax? But we have higher rates here for industrial and commercial property than other places in North America. So business is paying for transit. Having said that, it is woefully underfunded and it's woefully underbuilt. But that's not a role for business. I think there are ways that the TTC, for example, could be restructured financially to have a better capital base and to fund its operations. Right now, it's got a huge problem with funding its operations. And in fact, when Eglinton comes on stream, that's going to lift the operating cost of the TTC substantially, maintenance, repair, everything else. I'm not sure they have the funds for it.
Oh, okay. Something we'll have to watch for. In terms of, in the last couple of minutes that we have, recommendations. When we talk about not just transit here, but congestion, our gridlock problem, what do you have?
Well, we put out a report called an action plan actually last year. It was adopted by the city. We were very pleased with that. The mayor adopted it, and so did council. One of our recommendations was have a traffic commissioner, a congestion commissioner. They've just appointed a congestion commissioner, but we really thought we needed a point person at a very senior level at City Hall who would be able to work across the departments and focus on how do I solve this big problem. That person has to have significant authority because everything is a trade-off. And in the past, we make multiple trade-offs and congestion doesn't get resolved. So you're going to have to make trade-offs in favor of traffic flow, but those are things like putting in place smart signaling, like AI-enabled signaling, which other cities are using in abundance. We've been very slow to adopt. We have pilot projects now. But you can, that would move traffic freely where there is no cross traffic coming. You don't sit there at a red light and nobody's coming. Why, So you've got that. Then you've got things like we have relatively few major arteries as a big city. We need to get back to 2 lanes of traffic, right? Which we had in the past, but often now they're reduced by on-street parking, maybe LRT or street cars, Cafe TO, bike lanes. All of those things have now really shut down essentially some of our major arteries, making congestion a lot worse. The congestion commissioner should have responsibility for a plan for easing congestion on those major arteries. One other thing, we've had a lot of construction, a lot of construction projects, building condos and so on. Often a lane is taken out of service, right? And you could go down a major artery and have 3 or 4 of those on your route into the city or out.
Happens a lot, yeah.
But really, you know, when you think about it, the city has charged in the past relatively little to take a lane out of service. Other cities either ban it, right, or charge a lot. So you reduce the amount of time that lane is taken out of service because it costs you a lot of money. And so we recommended that the city massively increase the cost, particularly on major arteries, so that you reduce the frequency of those and you reduce the time taken. Those are things that the city has now adopted as, you know, policy, but now we have to see them implemented.
All right, seems like a bumpy road to get us to where we need to, but there's a lot of promise there. So looking forward to it.
It's critical to the future of the city.
All right, Giles, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.